We are the species that unlocked the atom before we learned how to heal our trauma. The species that engineered artificial intelligence while failing to recognize the intelligence of compassion. We are brilliant enough to measure the curvature of space-time, yet still struggle to measure the weight of loneliness in our own cities. This, my friends, is the paradox of our age. Infinite progress in knowledge, and yet staggering lag in wisdom. But let me be clear. This isn't a condemnation of humanity. It's an invitation. An invitation to observe the world, not just through the lens of what we can calculate or control, but through the greater question, what are we evolving toward? Throughout the observable universe, systems evolve as stars collapse to form denser, more luminous bodies. Galaxies collide and rearrange. Ecosystems adapt or perish under the forces of change. In this cosmic dance, change is not a flaw. It is the very function of evolution. So it should come as no surprise that the systems we've constructed our economies, our politics, our definitions of success must also be subject to entropy, to decay, and ultimately to rebirth. We are witnessing that entropy now. What we call old systems are not inherently evil. They are outdated code operating in a software that no longer matches the hardware of our human potential. These systems were constructed during times of scarcity, fear, and industrial dominance. They prioritize survival over soul, efficiency over empathy. But in a world where we can transmit knowledge across continents in milliseconds and peer into the birth of stars billions of light years away, the question arises, why are we still using systems built for a world that no longer exists? The cracks in the foundation are no longer hairline fractures. They're fault lines. Economic infrastructures that once held entire civilizations together now teeter on instability. Environmental feedback loops driven by centuries of unchecked extraction are now accelerating beyond control. And our collective mental health has become the most silent, invisible pandemic of them all. What does a civilization do when its scaffolding fails? Does it crumble or does it evolve? Here is where the story takes a surprising turn, not toward despair, but toward emergence. Because just as black holes give birth to galaxies, and just as dying stars seed the universe with the elements for life, the collapse of outdated human systems creates the fertile space for something unprecedented to rise. Into this vacuum step the healers. Now, don't imagine cloaks, crystals, or incantations. That's not where we're going. In the lexicon of the cosmos, healing is not magical, it's natural. It's the correction of entropy, the rebalancing of systems. It's what gravity does when a rogue asteroid finds a stable orbit. It's what biology does when a wound closes. And in society, healing looks like individuals who choose to serve connection over consumption, depth over distraction, wholeness over winning. They are not all therapists. They're not all doctors. They are musicians, engineers, school teachers, quantum physicists, community organizers, parents, and poets. They are those who sense, whether consciously or through a quiet intuition, that our species is undergoing a phase shifter, kind of cultural quantum leap. Let me give you the physics of it. In quantum mechanics, there's a moment called quantum tunneling. When a particle moves through a barrier, it shouldn't be able to cross. Classical physics says it's impossible. But quantum physics whispers, look again. This is what's happening on a societal level. Healers are tunneling through walls built by fear, by economic stratification, by inherited trauma. They are defying the expectations set by centuries of hierarchical thinking, and in doing so, they are reprogramming the field. These people may not know the names of all the particles they're shifting, but they can feel the energy. They can feel that the old paradigm where value is defined by productivity, dominance, and external validation is collapsing under its own gravitational weight. And they can also feel the pulse of a new possibility. A world where the metric of worth is not accumulation, but alignment. Not efficiency, but empathy. But let's not romanticize this transition. When tectonic plates shift, earthquakes follow. The fall of old systems does not look like a graceful sunset. It looks like confusion. It looks like unrest in the streets. It looks like burnout, depression, spiritual crises, and political chaos. But those are not signs of the end. They are labor contractions. because what is being born is not a utopia, it is a more awakened humanity. And every birth has its midwives. The healers, those awakened to their inner compasser, stepping into this moment, not because they are superior, but because they are sensitive. They feel deeply, and for too long, that sensitivity was seen as weakness in a system that idolized toughness, detachment, and linear logic. But now, in the twilight of those old systems, sensitivity is not a liability, it is a superpower. It's what allows a physicist to detect the faint whisper of gravitational waves. It's what allows a mother to know her child's cry before a sound is made. And it's what allows these healers to sense the pain beneath the policies, the fear behind the facade. They are not here to save the world. They are here to participate in its transformation, like cosmic dust coalescing into stars. They are gathering, forming networks, communities, and ecosystems of care. They are using technology not just for commerce, but for consciousness. They are bridging neuroscience with ancient wisdom, merging trauma-informed care with systemic redesign, and reimagining education, governance, and economics through the lens of human dignity. This is not spiritual fantasy. It's physics applied to sociology. It's the principle of emergence where the whole becomes greater than the sum of its parts. And you, dear listener, are not excluded from this. The fact that you are here listening, absorbing these words, suggests that you are part of this movement. Perhaps you felt the dissonance tooth mismatch between what you were told would make you happy and the quiet ache inside that whispers, there must be more. That whisper is not your weakness. It is your signal. It's the Morse code of your own awakening. Now, some may ask, why now? Why are the old systems falling now? Why are the healers rising in this particular epoch? To that, we turn again to science. In chaos theory, there's a phenomenon known as the bifurcation point. It's when a system becomes so unstable that it must either collapse or reorganize at a higher level of complexity. We are, as a species, at a bifurcation point. The data is everywhere. Climate data, economic indicators, mental health statistics, geopolitical instability. But within that data is also something more subtle. The rise of collective consciousness, the increase in empathy-based leadership, the global hunger for authenticity, the rise of trauma-informed institutions, the expansion of spiritual literacy, even in scientific communities. This convergence is not accidental, it's evolutionary. Healers are not here to lead revolutions through force. They lead by coherence, by aligning their internal state with the world they wish to see. Their presence calibrates the space around them like a tuning fork that causes others to vibrate in resonance. And over time, this resonance builds. It becomes a frequency strong enough to override the noise of fear and disconnection. The question now is not whether the old systems will fall, they already are. The question is, what will we build in their place? Will we reconstruct the same hierarchies just with new technology? Or will we dare to reimagine civilization itself, one rooted not in dominance, but in harmony? Let us be bold enough to choose the latter. Let us realize that healing is not just about tending to the wounded. It's about transforming the conditions that create the wounds in the first place. It's about re-engineering the entire framework from education to economics to ecology around the principle that every human being is a node in the great web of life. And when enough of us awaken to that truth, the tipping point will not be a moment of collapse, it will be a moment of ignition. If you look up at the night sky on a clear evening, you're not just looking at stars, you're looking at time. Every point of light that reaches your eyes began its journey millions, sometimes billions of years ago. In cosmic terms, you are witnessing the past in real time. That's the paradox of light it reveals, even as it delays. And so it is with our civilization. We are staring into systems whose light is still visible, but whose lifeblood has already faded. The education models we use today were forged in the industrial age, designed to produce compliant workers for factories that no longer exist. Our economic blueprints were drawn during eras of colonization and monopolistic conquest. And our political frameworks, so often defined by binary choice, are relics of times when nuance was too complex for the masses to manage. But now, we are those masses and we are no longer unthinking. The sheer connectivity of our age has made it impossible to ignore the dissonance. A child in Vietnam can watch a protest in Brazil in real time. An artist in Nigeria can collaborate with a coder in Canada before either finishes their morning coffee. Global consciousness is no longer poetic, metaphor, it's empirical reality. Yet with this awareness comes pressure. Because now we see clearly. We see what's broken, what's unjust, what's unsustainable, and with clarity comes responsibility. That is where the healers come in not as saviors, but as stabilizers in a turbulent quantum field. You see, energy systems, whether social or physical, respond to coherence. A single synchronized metronome, when placed among a chaotic group, will eventually bring the rest into harmony. That's physics. And it's also the role of the awakened soul in a society losing rhythm. Healers, whether through word or presence or action, operate as nodes of coherence. They carry an inner alignment that recalibrates their surroundings, not by force, but by frequency. And the beauty of frequency is that it doesn't require permission. It simply resonates. And when it resonates with enough people, enough communities, enough systems, it begins to reshape the field. But to understand the full magnitude of this reshaping, we must look beyond the poetic and into the planetary. Earth, as we now understand it, is not just a rock floating in the void. It is a highly sensitive, self-regulating organism. The Gaia hypothesis posits that the Earth functions as a complex, synergistic system where life influences its own environment to sustain more life. In other words, the planet is alive with feedback loops. And when one system spirals out of balance, others rush in to correct it. Human consciousness is one such corrective system. When we pollute the air, it is not merely nature that subversive is our own lungs. When we destroy forests, it is not just a loss of tree sit, it is the unraveling of climate patterns that sustain human civilization. And when we ignore suffering in one part of the world, it manifests as unrest in another. These are not disconnected issues. These are interdependent signals in a single living system. And the healers are those who have learned how to listen. They are attuned not just to what is happening, but to why it is happening. They understand that crises are not random. They are evolutionary feedback. They are the immune responses of a planet trying to wake up its most powerful species. So here we are standing at the edge of two timelines. One, where we rebuild the old world with smarter technology, but the same spiritual poverty. And another where we dare to build something entirely new, a world that prioritizes coherence over control, care over conquest, and connection over consumption. Let's not be naive. The first timeline is easier. It's familiar. It runs on autopilot. But easy paths rarely lead to meaningful destinations. The second path, the path of conscious evolution, requires effort, intention, and courage. It asks each of us to become something more than we were trained to be. It asks us to become aware. That is no small request. Because awareness is uncomfortable. It means questioning what you were taught, challenging inherited assumptions, and examining the architecture of your own identity. It means becoming the observer of your own ego, your own habits, your own biases. And that, my friends, is the work of a healer. To be a healer is not to fix others. It is to become so whole within yourself that others remember what wholeness feels like in your presence. It is to become a mirror reflecting not the masks people wear, but the light they forgot they carried. It is to walk into a broken system and radiate such clarity that the system begins to question itself. That is the quiet power of the awakened human. And it is more disruptive than any protest, more viral than any meme, more transformational than any top-down policy. Because once someone feels that frequency, authentic, aligned, compassionate, they never forget it. It imprints on them. It alters their inner chemistry. It recodes the nervous system. And then they become the frequency for someone else. And so it spreads not as ideology, but as resonance. This is how revolutions happen in nature. Not through commands from above, but through distributed intelligence. The way birds in a murmuration turn simultaneously. The way neurons in a brain fire in synchronous pattern, the way mycelium underground connects entire forests in an unseen web of communication. This is not fiction. This is biology. This is physics. This is our birthright. We are not isolated consciousness pods. We are entangled beings connected not just by the internet, but by the fabric of space-time itself. And if that sounds poetic, remember, Einstein called this fabric the geometry of the universe. It curves, it warps, it bends in response to mass and energy, and so do we. When enough of us carry the mass of love, the mass of empathy, the mass of truth, the very geometry of reality begins to bend in a new direction. And maybe, just maybe, that is the point of all this chaos. Not to destroy, but to reroute. Not to end, but to upgrade. Not all stars burn forever. Some collapse into neutron stars. Others go supernova. But none die in vain. Each one contributes to the chemical evolution of the universe, scattering the building blocks of life into the cosmos. And perhaps the systems we are watching collapse to your politics, our economies, our ways of relating are the supernovas of an outdated species. Their death is not a tragedy, it's a cosmic contribution. The question is, will we rise to build what comes next? To understand the rise of the healers, we must first understand the wound. Because healing is not random. It responds to rupture. And in our species, that rupture has a name: disconnection. Despite our unprecedented technological connectivity, we are suffering from a crisis of fragmentation. Fragmented attention, fragmented identities, fragmented communities. We have more data than ever before, but less wisdom. More followers, but fewer deep relationships. We scroll endlessly, seeking the dopamine rush of relevance, but often forgetting the deeper neurobiology of belonging. And this isn't just metaphorical. Neuroscience confirms it. The human brain is wired for connection. The prefrontal cortex, or seat of logic and planning, evolved in concert with our capacity for empathy and relational bonding. The mirror neurons in our brain don't just allow us to observe behavior, they allow us to feel what others feel. We are biologically designed to co-regulate, to reflect one another's emotional states, to heal each other through presence. But when you insert that ancient neurology into modern life, into hyper-individualism, overwork, isolation, and competition, you get a species that is not just anxious or depressed, but fundamentally out of alignment with its evolutionary design. That's not weakness, that's physics. When a system operates in contradiction to its design parameters, it destabilizes. And that is what we are witnessing across all sectors of society. Destabilization born from disconnection. Enter the healers. Not as saviors descending from above, but as harmonizers emerging from within. These are individuals who have remembered or are in the process of remembering that our nervous systems are not private property. They are communal instruments. And when played in tune, they create resonance fields that others can join. This isn't mystical, it's measurable. HeartMath Institute, for instance, has shown that the electromagnetic field of the human heart can synchronize with those around us. When someone is in a coherent emotional state like gratitude or compassion, their physiological rhythms harmonize. And nearby individuals begin to entrain to that pattern. In plain terms, your inner state affects the biofield of the people around you. Think of it like gravity. Massive bodies curve space-time. But emotionally coherent humans curve psychological space-time. They create a pull sense of safety, truth, and clarity that others naturally orbit around. Now, multiply that effect. Imagine entire networks of such individuals aligned in purpose, grounded in self-awareness, attuned to the emotional fields of those around them. That is not a spiritual movement. That is a planetary upgrade in collective coherence. And here's the part we often overlook. It doesn't take the majority. In physics, a phenomenon called the critical mass threshold describes the point at which a system spontaneously reorganizes. It doesn't take every molecule to reach boiling point just enough to tip the entire system. In social systems, this has been echoed in studies suggesting that when just 10% of a population holds an unshakable belief that belief can rapidly become majority consensus. The rise of the healers is not about converting the masses, it's about tipping the frequency. And that tipping point is closer than you think. Consider this. Never before in history have we had this many people meditating, questioning, healing, exploring consciousness, or choosing service over self-advancement. Never before have ancient modalities once relegated to mysticism, been investigated by neuroscience and validated through data. Never before have breathwork, trauma therapy, psychedelics, and indigenous wisdom been part of mainstream conversations in policy, education, and mental health. This isn't coincidence, it's convergence. The healers are not one group, they are many. They are scientists exploring consciousness, not as a chemical byproduct, but as a fundamental layer of the universe. They are economists redesigning value systems to reflect well-being rather than GDP. They are educators shifting from compliance-based teaching to curiosity-based learning. They are social architects, trauma-informed leaders, integrative physicians, and quietly awakened beings tending gardens, communities, and broken hearts. Their impact is often invisible because healing doesn't shout, it hums. But over time, that hum becomes a tone. That tone becomes a wave. And that wave begins to resonate with the deepest truth the cosmos has ever known. Connection is the nature of reality. In quantum entanglement, particles separated by vast distances can affect one another instantaneously. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. But what if that spooky action isn't spooky at all? What if it's a clue or reminder that at the deepest level, separation is an illusion? What if healers are simply those who have stopped believing in the illusion? That's not naivete. That's quantum literacy. Because the farther we peer into the foundations of matter, the more we find fields, not things. Patterns, not objects. Probabilities, not certainties. And so too with society. The deeper we look into our crises, the more we find patterns of fear, trauma, and misalignment. And if we can map those patterns, we can redesign them. But let me be clear. This is not about escaping reality. It's about upgrading our participation in it. To be a healer is not to retreat to the mountains. It is to sit in the boardroom with integrity, to raise a child with presence, to navigate a protest with grounded compassion, to vote, to teach, to speak, to lead not with ego, but with coherence. Because healing is not soft, it is precise. It is surgical. It is the reweaving of reality itself. And this moment in history, this strange, volatile, electrified, momentous, not the end. It is the incision point, the place where the old story gets interrupted, where entropy meets intention, and where the fabric of our shared future begins to be stitched anew. And maybe you're still wondering, am I one of them? Am I a healer? The fact that you're still listening tells me all I need to know. Because the call to heal is not a job title, it's a frequency. And if it's vibrating in you, if you feel the restlessness, the ache, the quiet urgency to contribute in some way, you are already on the path. You don't need credentials, you need coherence. You don't need permission, you need participation. You don't need to save the world. You need to become the kind of person around whom the world begins to save itself. In the known universe, evolution favors systems that self-correct. In biology, we call this homeostasis, the ability of an organism to detect imbalances and recalibrate in order to maintain equilibrium. In ecology, it's resilience, the capacity of a forest or coral reef to recover after disruption. And in cosmology, it's symmetry, the elegant balance of forces that keeps galaxies from flying apart. So the question becomes, what is the human equivalent of this cosmic law of balance? What force restores order not through dominance, but through understanding? It is healing, and contrary to the narratives we've been sold, healing is not just a personal pursuit. It is a systemic imperative, because what's true at the individual level is also true at scale. Trauma unaddressed becomes dysfunction, and dysfunction replicated becomes collapse. Let's take education. The traditional education system was designed, quite literally, during the Industrial Revolution to create predictable, obedient, productive citizens. The goal was not to awaken the soul, it was to standardize the worker. Bell schedules mimicked factory shifts, desks lined up like assembly lines. Creativity, emotional intelligence, and intuition were rarely measured because they could not be monetized. But children are not machines. They are quantum system sensitive, dynamic, nonlinear. And the healers who enter education now understand this. They no longer ask, how do we fill these minds with facts? They ask, what conditions allow curiosity to bloom? What relationships nurture resilience? How do we teach not for test scores, but for planetary stewardship? Healing and education looks like trauma-informed classrooms. It looks like teachers who understand the neurobiology of safety. It looks like curriculum that includes emotional literacy, global awareness, and ecological interdependence. It looks like moving from compliance to coherence. Now, look at healthcare. For all its technological advances, modern medicine often treats the body like a malfunctioning machine isolating symptoms rather than investigating systems. But healers in this space are changing that too. They are restoring the ancient truth now validated by psychoneuroimmunology, that the mind and body are not separate, that stress and inflammation are linked, and that compassion is not just good ethics, it's good science. They are reminding us that a healed patient is not just one who survives, but one who thrives. Healing in medicine looks like integrative care. It looks like listening as much as prescribing. It looks like treating the story, not just the symptom. And yes, it looks like reducing the distance between science and spirit, not by erasing rigor, but by expanding relevance. Now zoom out to economics. What is an economy if not a collective agreement on value? And what happens when that agreement prioritizes growth over life, profit over people, scarcity over sufficiency? You get exactly what we have: a system that rewards extraction, externalizes harm, and considers wellness a luxury rather than a baseline human right. But the healers here are reimagining the metrics. They are designing economies that measure well-being, not just wealth. They are experimenting with regenerative models that mirror the cycles of nature, where resources are not exploited but replenished, where value is created not by hoarding but by circulating, where the question is not, how can I win? But how can we thrive? This is not utopianism. It's system science informed by empathy. In the natural world, the most sustainable systems are cooperative. Mycorrhizal fungi, for example, form underground networks that distribute nutrients across entire forests, allowing stronger trees to feed weaker ones. This isn't charity, it's mutual survival. And the healers rising in our time are applying this same principle to human systems. Create networks that support, share, and self-sustain. They are building what the old world never could: a civilization that doesn't just survive on Earth, but belongs to it. And here's the profound realization. Every healed system begins with a healed individual, because systems don't change when we convince enough people to act differently. They change when we become different, when we integrate our shadow, when we reparent our inner child, when we heal the trauma that taught us to betray ourselves to be accepted, when we've forgiven it for the other, but for our own freedom. When we do this internal work, our very biology changes. Cortisol levels drop. The immune system stabilizes. Brain hemispheres reconnect. Creativity returns. And from that new biology emerges a new society. So the most revolutionary thing you can do today might not be to protest or argue or post online. It might be to sit with your discomfort, to breathe through your panic, to apologize sincerely, to rest when you're tired, to cry when you're grieving, to speak when you're silent, to love yourself in the presence of your shame. Because every time you do that, you create a new field, a microclimate of coherence in a world choking on chaos. And coherence is contagious. We used to think the heart was a pump, but the heart is also an oscillator. It emits a measurable electromagnetic field that extends several feet from the body. When you're in a state of gratitude, compassion, or love, your heart's rhythms become ordered, rhythmic, coherent, and nearby hearts, quite literally, begin to sync to that pattern. So when you heal, even quietly, the world around you feels it. That's not poetry, that's physics. And this is why the rise of the healers is not just a side effect of societal collapse. It is the counterforce, the balancing equation, the necessary symmetry. They are not rising in spite of the fall of the old systems. They are rising because of it called forth by a universal intelligence that understands better than we do what balance requires. And what does balance require now? It requires leaders who can feel, systems that can listen, cultures that remember, and individuals who are willing to break the cycle not by fighting it, but by outgrowing it. This is not the end of the world. It is the end of a chapter. And the next chapter will not be written by institutions. It will be written by individuals, those willing to align their biology, their beliefs, and their behavior with the blueprint of a more awakened species. That means in astrophysics, there's something called the anthropic principle. It states that the universe must have properties that allow conscious life to emerge, because if it didn't, we wouldn't be here to ask the question. Some interpret this as evidence of cosmic fine-tuning. Others see it as proof of infinite probabilistic variation. But either way, it leads to the same breathtaking realization: you are not an accident. Consider the sheer improbability of your existence. 4 billion years of planetary evolution, hundreds of thousands of years of human migration, adaptation, and survival. A single sperm out of 400 trillion fusing with a single egg. The precise genetic cocktail, the unfolding of neural pathways, the social and cosmic variables aligning not just for life, but for your life, for your exact consciousness to emerge at this precise moment in history. Now ask yourself, why? Why now at the threshold of planetary transition? Why are you alive in a time where old systems are failing, where new possibilities are stirring, where the future itself seems to be holding its breath? Is it coincidence or is it invitation? Because in cosmology, we do not mistake patterns for accidents. When gravitational forces create galaxies, when entropy births stars, when chaos gives way to complexity, we understand that intelligence is embedded in the very fabric of space-time. And you, dear listener, are part of that fabric. You are the intelligence waking up to itself. This is the deeper meaning of being a healer in a collapsing world. It's not about escaping the chaos. It's about embodying the coherence. It's about being the still point in the storm, the place where the field reorganizes, the eye in the cosmic hurricane through which a new world remembers how to breathe. So what does that look like practically? It looks like living in such alignment with your values that your life becomes a transmission. It looks like showing up imperfect, uncertain, but sincere. It looks like refusing to abandon hope, even when logic says you should. It looks like learning how to rest before you collapse, how to listen before you preach, how to self-regulate before you react, how to love without controlling, how to heal without performing, how to trust the timeline of your life, even when you cannot predict the plot. Because here's the quiet truth of the universe. Its most powerful changes are slow. Stars take millions of years to be born, forests regenerate over centuries, and the shift from one global paradigm to another, that doesn't happen in a day, a law, or an election. It happens breath by breath, choice by choice, healed wound by healed wound. So stop underestimating the scale of your subtle work. The moment you chose presence over projection, the day you forgave without fanfare, the night you listened instead of defended, the morning you got up and kept going, not because the world rewarded you, but because something deeper in you knew it was time. These are not small acts. They are gravitational. They bend reality toward coherence. And one day, perhaps decades from now, a child may ask, what was it like to live through the great unraveling? And someone, maybe even you, will answer, hard, strange, beautiful, and necessary. And they'll ask, how do we make it through? And your answer will be simple, because enough of us remembered who we really were. So let us remember that we are stardust becoming conscious, that every cell in your body was forged in the furnace of a dying star, that the carbon in your bones, the iron in your blood, the oxygen in your breath, it all belonged once to something ancient, luminous, and immeasurably vast. Let us remember that the universe is not dead matter. It is a living field of unfolding intelligence, and you are its latest revelation. Let us remember that evolution is not just adaptation to external conditions. It is the internal emergence of greater compassion, greater coherence, greater complexity. And let us remember that in this grand evolutionary arc, the most important metric is not speed, profit, or control. It is presence. It is awareness. It is love. So when the world tempts you to numb out, lash out, or give up, come back to the truth of physics, energy is never lost, only transferred. So choose what energy you want to transfer into this field. Let it be the energy of grace, of grounded clarity, of courage without ego, of responsibility without shame, of awe. Because this universe is not asking you to be a savior, it's asking you to be awake, to participate in the turning of the page. You are not here to fight the darkness, you are here to turn on the light. And when enough lights come on, the old systems won't just fall, they'll dissolve, not from force, but from irrelevance. In that vacuum, a new blueprint will take shape, not handed down from the top, but co-created from the ground up, from the heart out, from the healed in. And when that future finally arrives, when the dust settles and the systems have realigned, someone will trace the thread back through history. And they'll find you, they'll find us. They'll say, it was the healers. Quietly, steadily, without titles or applause, they tilted the axis of the world. So go now, not to escape, but to engage. Be the coherence in the chaos. Be the frequency in the noise. Be the healer you were born to be. Because the systems are falling and your time has come, let your presence be your revolution. And let the stars watch in awe as the earth remembers who she is through you.